Welcome. It's the grand rising. Wake up. Nap time's over. Teammate that's been trampled. Well, this is going to help explain what Mr. Della Rocca was trying to explain to everybody. It's quite important. You should probably pay attention. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask. Not a problem. And let's see. Yeah. If you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. I'm hoping that most of you probably already know this stuff, but just for the unclear, I mean, this is the science. This is the stuff he was preaching. This is our rapture, whatever you want to call it. I told you I'd be real. I'm real. Here I am. Boom, boom. Trying to do the right thing, man. You know, all of us need to do the right thing. That's just it. And, well, we have a teammate that's being trampled, so we need to step up the blocking. All right? So here you go. Pay attention. I'm going to start this and just be quiet and let Professor Doug Vogt of the Diehold Foundation explain to you. Today we're going to talk about Senate Bill 4488. I mean, most of you people should look this up. It's important. Senate Bill 4488. You won't believe how important this is, okay? Once you realize how important Senate Bill 4488 is, then you'll understand why they're beating us up when the truth comes out. Okay? Here we go.
Hi, my name is Doug Vogt from the Diehold Foundation.
Pay attention.
It's June 7th, 2023, and this is part 6I, and this is what I'm going to cover in this, and it's very important for all of you who think that the crust is going to wind up moving 90 degrees. Well, why am I doing this video on a failed theory? CIA involvement in academia to control the narrative. If you're in academia, teacher, college professor, you really want to watch that part of it for sure. Who was Charles Hapgood? How did the theory of crust displacement get started? When and why did he do this research? What scientists did not know at the time his book was written? In other words, he was too soon before a lot of things were discovered. You're going to find out what. Did Albert Einstein have any involvement in Hapgood's book or even agreed with it? It's all about philosophy. Unless you have the right philosophy of how the universe really works, you cannot figure this problem out. It has been haunting geologists and geophysicists for well over 100 years. And Chapter 8 in this book has over 392 references from the journals. It basically is where I put the whole thing together, what happens, the cause of it, everything. This is the latest iteration of the theory of multidimensional reality, which enabled me to figure this out. This is Hapgood's book. I read the whole thing, which the people on YouTube who profess this is correct, they never did, or they had no idea what they were reading and didn't understand it. So anyway, this is the reason why I'm doing this video. The conclusion of his book, and also Chen Thomas's, is that the new north and south axis of the Earth is going to be off the coast of Peru and off the coast of Thailand, Indonesia, which is wrong. And people are trying to say, well, go by land up here where it's freezing cold, and it's going to be the new temperate zone or the tropics. This is totally wrong, pure bullshit. And I'm doing this video, which explains where the idea originally came from, so you understand, as well as the next video will be on Chen Thomas and who he is and what he was doing, and the 3 documents that he created. The first thing is understand the timeline of what's going on here. Why government did certain things at certain times. This is actually important. Especially if you're in academia, you want to know this. Central Intelligence Agency Act of 1949. Now, the agency was created in the Security Act of 47, and then they felt it necessary by 49 to expand it and give it authority to do a whole bunch of things. So this is what they did. Section 25 of the law. By the way, I have the law. If you want me to send it to you, write to info@Die-Hole Foundation. I'll send you a copy of the law. Improvement of education in science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Definition in this section. Every law has a definition section. Eligible entity, basically any nonprofit, profit or nonprofit organization, state, federal, anybody. Educational institution, they define it. And educational institution includes public or private elementary school, secondary school, institution, higher education, college or university, the whole 9 yards. For profit or nonprofit institutions dedicated to improving science, technology, engineering, the arts. I don't highlight the arts because they were probably, that word was probably put in for some politicians to get the bill passed. Mathematics, everything else is irrelevant. Promote development and education relating to science, technology, engineering, or mathematics. Requirements. Director shall, on continuing basis, identify actions that the director may take to improve education in the scientific blah, 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 same thing. This is the real part. Long-term national security needs of the United States. Got it? That's really why they're setting this thing up. Authorities, in general, director in support of educational programs in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics may award grants to eligible entities, provide cash awards and other items eligible entities, accept voluntary service, support national competitions. I remember they had a scholastic competition TV series. I wonder if they were the ones who were running it. Who knows? Enter into one or more education partnership agreements with educational institutions in the United States for the purpose of encouraging and enhancing study in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics disciplines at all levels of education. Now you know how and why they were able to get into involve themselves in Columbia University. They even had the dean of the school was one of them, promoted by them to get them in, to make sure it was the programs that they wanted. Education partnership agreements, nature of assistance program, you're gonna laugh your head off. When you read this, if you're, especially in the education business, you say, wait a minute, they sound more like the Department of Education that Carter created. Leasing, loaning equipment to educational institutions, making personnel available to teach science courses.
I forgot to tell you. I forgot to tell you. I called Doug Vogt this morning, and unfortunately he didn't have the time to talk to me right this moment, but he told me to call him back at 10 o'clock tonight. So I'm going to be calling Doug at 10, and I'm going to ask him for his help to just see what we could do to get this dude's channel back, because Professor Vogt, he's connected with people, so I'm going to ask him to join the team. How about that? So let's get back to it. Pay attention. This is very important.
development of science courses. My professor is a spook. Providing sabbatical opportunities for faculty. In other words, they're going to employ them to go do something, what they want. Maybe go to Iran and see if we...
To the two people listening, we're learning about Senate Bill 4488, and this is what Michael Della Rocca was trying to explain to everybody. Okay, so pay attention.
We can overthrow somebody. Involving faculty and students of the HL institution in agency projects, including research and technology transfer transition project. I highlighted this. They never define what transition projects are. That's interesting. 5, cooperating with educational institutions in developing a program under which students may be given academic credit for work on agency projects. Now you know why they had to really get involved with Columbia, maybe some other cool schools too, including research and technology transfers and transition projects. 6, providing academic and career advice. In other words, they're trying to hire people out of college. When they see the student, male or female, is smart, I think you should work for the agency. See the world. Now, on that note, right now, if you're a teacher or a professor, you're saying to yourself, what the hell happened? The CIA in the beginning became the Department of Education. God knows how much of their budget was bribing school administrators to get what they wanted out of them. Now, what may have caused the U.S. government to enact such a law? A couple of things I've included here. Admiral Byrd, what happened is he had actually 5 expeditions to the South Pole. One was in the late 30s, and then World War II interrupted that. After the war, from 46 to 47, he had an expedition there. Aerial photographs basically mapped a part of Antarctica. Anyway, then Operation Deep Freeze, 55 to 56, part of collaboration of International Geophysical View, which I've covered before. And that's actually the solar cycle, the last Glasberg cycle, and the sun was really acting up. The only country that didn't belong to it, or didn't join it, was Communist China. They were too busy killing
Smash
their
the like people. Button.
So they...
As you guys join this thing, man, type in the chat, because I don't have 1,000 subscribers to do all that stuff, and I'm let's do this as a team, man. So as you join in, type in what we're doing. This is what Michael Della Rocca was trying to explain to you. Okay, this is the truth. Nobody can dispute or refute this work. Okay, that's why Professor Vogt's channel's still up on the thing. So let's get awake here and start acting like a team. Okay, I mean not that you're not, but let's go.
Establish a permanent base in Antarctica, and that's what he did. Now, the other thing I included here was July 8th, 1947, Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release stating that they had recovered a flying disc. They were telling the truth, and the military hushed it up and gave an alternate excuse of a weather balloon, and nobody believed it. And
thank you.
So anyway, I
Type in the
think
chat if you
Admiral
can do
Byrd's
it.
expeditions, especially in this one, I think they found stuff, or maybe in this one, they found stuff that they couldn't explain. And I'll show you what I mean. Oh, this is International Geophysical
Type it in the
Year.
chat.
They produced
Type
this
to
stamp
everybody.
in like March or April of 58, which is, this is an engraved stamp. And they got it out. One of my fans sent me a whole sheet of them. I already had some plate blocks of them, but don't send any more, please. But it tells you everything you need to know. No, geophysical means the study of the Earth. Then ask yourself, why are they showing the sun? And this is
great solar flash.
The ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. This is supposed to be the hand of God, almost touching the hand of man. It's like saying, please, God, help us out so we can figure this thing out so we won't get destroyed. This is, again, I showed this again in beginning of video series 4. This was done by the Fraunhofer Institute.
I'm not scared of the truth.
And this is what they used to do. They used to draw what the map, what the sun looked like. And for a period, and this is September, October, November, December of 57, from December 22nd to the, what is it, 26th, from 316 to 355 sunspots in that period of time. That's just facing us. So needless to say, they were scared. They didn't know what had happened. The existing theory was our sun was steady state. It basically burned and used up matter to create energy, but all of a sudden this thing is creating a lot more energy. In fact, I've mentioned in the past, the growing season was extended by 30 days. That's called global warming. And it has nothing to do with CO2. It has to do with the sun. That's an IQ test, by the way. Okay, this is what they may have seen. He may have photographed this. I'm a geologist. This is not natural. This is a 4-sided pyramid, extremely old. Don't know how old. They may have seen this, which is a frozen ocean wave. Now, this isn't the height of it. The height's way up here, up there. This thing's probably like 500 or 600 feet high, froze solid. A man stands about like this high. That's to give you how the scale of what's going on here. And this is petrified wood, a tree. Well, the last time Antarctica had a war, didn't have any ice on it, was probably Carniferous period or Jurassic, when the Earth was a lot closer to the sun. And I'll go over that a little later. I'll cover it a little later. You'll see what I mean. Now, this is, I think, one of the reasons he wrote this book. Velikovsky wrote this book in 1950. Did a good job of going through the legends, but he had no idea what could have caused this disaster. He thought that Venus came dangerously close to the Earth and caused it, which was obviously incorrect. Before him, really the guy who did the best job was Ignatius Donnelly. He was a congressman in the 1880s. He published in 1883 and one about Atlantis in 1882. And this is copies of my copies of these books. And he does a very good job of covering the mythologies. By the way, Chen Thomas, when he did his book, he covered the legends, but Hapgood didn't. His was really a science book. I give him credit. You'll see what I mean as I go through this thing. He showed both sides, the arguments against and for. I did the same thing in Reality Revealed, 1977, and God's Day of Judgment in 2008, 2007. So anyway, so who is Hapgood? So this is a little history, but you're going to know who he really was. 1941, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt appointed William Donovan to head a new civilian office attached to the White House, the Coordinator of Information, COI. COI was charged with collecting and analyzing information, correlating such information and data, and making this information available to the president. On June 13, 1942, COI became the Office of Strategic Services, EOSS. Now, at this point, I'm going to explain something. The OSS became the CIA. And what happened, that functions still remain inherited by the CIA. That in the morning, somebody, usually the director of the CIA or his assistant or her assistant, would come to the president, Joe Biden and Trump, and advise them of what's going on that night or what is happening that day, and inform them of problems in the world. Anyway, that's important. Remember this. This is the bio about Hapgood. During World War II, Hapgood was employed by the Office of the Coordinator of Information, COI, which became the Office of Strategic Service, OSS, in 1942. And the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, also served as liaison officer, meaning he was very high up, between the White House and the Office of Secretary of War. I'll translate for you if you can't connect the dots. He wasn't Donovan, but it wouldn't surprise me. He was assistant director of the OSS. Now, they would have kept his name secret, even what he looked like, because you're at war, you don't want the enemy to kidnap the guy or also murder him. So I think we don't see much of him. I was lucky to find this and put it together. And you'll see the proof in a second regarding Hapgood and how he's involved. But that's who he is. He was in the CIA. And he was a very high security clearance. There's no question about it. So anyway, Hapgood, in his acknowledgments, give credit to the following. His book, somebody else's, Cataclysms of the Earth. Our inquiry first took organized form as an investigation of the ideas of Hugh Archinclose Brown. From now on, I'm going to call him Hugh Brown. I am deeply indebted to him for his original sensational suggestion that ice caps may have frequently capsized the Earth, for many suggestions for research that provided to be productive, for his generosity in sharing all of his research data with us, and for his patience in answering innumerable letters. Well, this guy, I don't think was in the CIA or OSS, but he wrote a book after he left in '67. That's the title of Brown's book. Hugh Archibald Brown died in '75. He was an electrical engineer who advanced in theory of cataclysmic pole shift. Brown claimed that the massive accumulation of ice at the poles caused recurring tipping of the axis in cycles of approximately 4,000 to 7,500 years. The number is interesting here, because Chen Thomas uses that number as trying to explain repeated cataclysms. He argued that because of the Earth wobbles and the axis and the crust slides in the mantle, a shift was demonstrably imminent. He also had the suggestion of using atomic bombs to blow up the ice caps, which maybe we won't take his advice. Maybe his judgment wasn't all that hot. Now, James Campbell was the co-contributor, co-author with Hapgood in this
Hogwash. This is what Michael was trying to tell you.
6 times. Concept of mechanism by which movement of the Earth's crust are accounted for is the completely new, although elements of it have been contributed by others. And that's what Campbell is doing. Okay, so who is this guy Campbell? We know he's a mechanical engineer. He says it in the book. The OSS scheme, this goes into the history of the OSS and what they do and make. Try not to laugh too hard. Some OSS schemes had a Rube Goldberg feel about them that seemed almost comical today. Project Campbell, for instance, was a remote-controlled speedboat designed at a local fishing, disguised as a local fishing craft, and guided by aircraft that would detonate against an anchored Japanese ship. Well, the problem is the Navy couldn't get close enough to make this thing work, so they did test it. They did blow up a test ship that they had, but they never changed the name of the project. It's him. Now, what this is showing me is that Hapgood, who's either Undersecretary of OSS and then finally CIA, wound up going to people that were already in the agency, already had a security clearance, and that he knew were good and he could trust. It's the same guy. So that proves Campbell was an OSS. First question they all should have asked is, and I'm surprised they didn't, why do the star, our star, and all the planets rotate? What's the real reason why they rotate? They never asked that question. If you can't answer that part of the question, everything you're going to assume or come up with is going to be wrong by definition. So this is the page in Hapgood's book, and this is a section. So section 2, crust displacement as a solution, a possible cause of crust displacement. Through the whole book, he's trying to figure out, is it possible to have this thing happen? Hugh Archibald Brown, an engineer, developed a theory by which the polar ice caps might shift the poles by capsizing, blah, 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 I covered it before. The rotation produced a very powerful sideways heave. Centrifugal effect, that was the key for him. Their whole thing is basically, what can these centrifugal forces overcome the bulge in the center of the Earth? You'll find out it doesn't. In fact, sufficient rib bolts up out of what had been a fine antique floor. Kind of a weird thing to say about the upper mantle. Much of this ice is an extra weight on the Earth's crust because of its accumulation so fast that there has been insufficient time for the Earth's crust to sink and adapt. It's also not true. Page 17, we suggest that at some point, ice caps could could grow so large that centrifugal effect would suffice to shatter the crust of the Earth, equatorial bulge, and permit the Earth to wobble farther off center. Turned out to be true. And also, by the way, they knew it was not true. Visualizations, by the way, he started his research 2 years after Velikovsky, so in 1952 he started the research. Imagine the map of Antarctica rotating. Okay, centrifugal effect of the ice cap tending to upset the Earth and the stabilizing effect of the bulge. Unfortunately for the theory, as it is stood, it appears that the stabilizing effect of the bulge was greater than its eccentric effect of the ice cap by several thousand times. At this point, by page 20, he knew it wasn't right. The bulge of the Earth is about 24 miles greater in diameter. And the mass, that weight of that mass, of not only ocean but crust, is far, far greater than the weight of any ice that's on the south and north poles. There is no question that this result, had it come earlier, would have brought the investigation to an end. But my geological research had been proceeding actively for more than 2 years. See? So he's up to 1954. Had produced such impressive evidence that I felt opposed to the complete abandonment of the project. Now, doesn't sound like he's doing a book. It sounds like he's doing a project for the CIA. At this point, when he's doing this up in the 50s, he's working for the CIA along with Campbell. Page 22, where the Antarctic ice cap is really growing as the theory requires, or is it retreat? Well, guess what? It's been retreating, and glaciers around the world have been melting since certainly 50 years, since early 60s. So, because the sun's output has been increasing.
Light
So
warriors.
it also blew his theory. If both the poles happen to fall in water areas, ice caps could not cease to develop, and thus the whole process of crust displacement be brought to an end. So the meteorologists already knew this can't be, because, you know, if it formed underwater, it's going to melt it. It's not going to be there. Why, if the crust displacement have been frequent in geological history, there are not evidences of more ice caps in geological record? Why, with that assumption, we find some rock formations that appear that they have been undisturbed since the earliest times? Now we're going to get to the real science. Alfred von Wegener suggested that the continents had moved. He did that in the late 1800s. Well, he was right. Now, what I'm going to show you in the next 5 or 6 slides, this is what they did not know in the 50s when Hapgood was putting this information together, obviously for the agency. They had no idea. Number one, this is what they thought Cambrian about 500 million years ago. But this number, by the way, is strictly guesswork. Anyway, at one point, there was one supercontinent called Gondwana. And you can see that South America and Antarctic was down here. But it was so long ago. The key to this whole thing is that we were closer to the sun. So that was the problem. So the only place that was really cool to survive were by the poles or in the oceans. By the way, here's the outline. This is Alaska, here's northern Canada. So the idea that they saw plant life, tropical plant life in the Arctic areas, because it was once here before it got pushed further north. You'll see it. Here's an example, maybe about 300 million years. Antarctica, this is where they had glaciers. This is as the continents were breaking up. And you'll see the evidence of it. Here's Australia, Antarctica, and how they fit together. Here where they are now. Okay, this is the whole key to the thing. If you want to know what the Earth was like 4 billion to 4.5 billion years ago, just look at Venus. This is the Hadrian period. And all these dates are just guesswork, intelligent guesswork. Venus hasn't even gotten to the point of having oxygen or even water. Forget it, it's just lava flows and tremendous heat, over 400 degrees. So this is as, you know, when you look at this, the plant life and animal life, you realize the only way this could existed is the Earth, every nova, that dust shell pushes the Earth a little further away from the sun. And at some point, you can see it in the record. First you have one-celled animals. Then you have corals and shelled animals. This is as the ocean started cooling down a little bit. And then fish formed around here. It can be a period of about 500. But again, don't take these numbers as literal. We really don't know. But as it cooled and we got further away from the sun, then insects and trees started forming in the Carboniferous period, and reptiles. Now, dinosaurs and reptiles, the key part here that proves my point is these are all reptiles. And what's so unique about reptiles, they have a 3-chambered heart. They don't have to generate heat internal to help digestion. Why? Because the environment was so warm, they didn't need it. It's only as the planet gets pushed further and further away that mammals started developing, and the dinosaurs died out because it got too cold for them. Then that's what happened. And here we've got the age of mammals and man. So it gives you an idea. This shows you something happened between here and there, and it could only be one thing. Our planet got pushed further and further away. If you doubt me, go look at Mars. It's got evidence of oceans and rivers. Where'd all the water go? It's all about that sun and what it does. Now,
Great solar
they
flash.
do none of this stuff. Now, here's the expansion joints. This is between South America and the Pacific here. And here's where it cracked. In other words, not only is the Earth going further away from the sun, but it's growing. And you'll see it, and many geologists now accept the idea because this is staring us in the face. The reason is that it's not a solid iron core in the center. That's got to be one of the stupidest things, theories that were ever created. And the reason is a center modulation point, which is what I say is there, is the only thing that creates matter, and it's coming out in this form. Now, I want to show you. You want to see physical evidence of the clock cycle? Here it is. Here's the ridge where the lava's coming out. It's like 9,000 feet deep. And here it is. They're all evenly spaced. There's your clock cycle. You got it? Now you know who's telling you the truth and who figured it out. They didn't, I did. So they'll tell you, don't believe your lying eyes. This is what's all over the world, all the way out there here. Further away, it gets covered by sediment and stuff like that. But you can see it, it's all evenly spaced. There's your physical evidence of the clock cycle in the matter world. Here's South America. This is where the area we were looking at before. And this tells you how fast it's expanding in certain areas. Some areas it's like 4 to 6 inches a year, some 3 and 2 inches a year. It gives you an idea. Here's another example. The idea that I've seen Chet Thomas and people who agree with him, that's on YouTube, that Greenland is supposed to go this way to do this. The one problem, they never studied geology or geophysics. You see this plate boundary? That is on the same plate as North America. It's not going anywhere. Also notice there's a canyon. It's called a canyon. It goes all the way down to the bottom, 3 miles down. The only way that could have happened is there was no ocean water here for a short period of time. When the water poured back in here, it created that canyon. See, there's a lot of physical evidence that I'm right, that what happens. Here's another one. Here's Madagascar, Africa, and here's 2 more slits. And you can see the expansion joints. Each one represents another cycle. There's a lot of them all over the world. Here's Australia. This is the boundary between Antarctica and Australia, pushing it north. Here's another one pushing Australia further east, away from Africa. Here's another example of the expansion, Mid-Atlantic Ridge. Now, The reason why Hapgood didn't know some of this stuff, the Navy was actually using sonar to map the bottom of the ocean, probably for submarines, I think. Later, they stuck magnetometers and actually started realizing, wait a minute, we've got reverse polarity, so many, depending on how many inches a year the thing expands, I realized, wait, we have another problem. What's going on here with a reversal? This is what they found. I've seen better pictures though. I've seen them where there's just been bands. The white is reversed, and this is normal polarity. So that's what was going on. That's what's happening. That's what they discovered. The Navy kept it a secret through the entire 40s and some of the 50s. Finally, it came out. Okay, 39. We're almost done with this thing. Page 39 in this book. Conflict with basic principles of physics in the field of meteorology. Now, this is why I'm saying the guy, Hapgood was a good scientist. He's trying to do a fair job of presenting a theory, because he's presenting this thing not to the general public. It was presented to the CIA and the president. They're trying to figure out these problems with geology, and do we have a real problem, especially after the sun went nuts. Remember, his book was published 1959, 2 years after the sun went nuts. It consists essentially of the fact that glacial periods were periods of heavier rainfall, as I explained, in the area outside the regions of the ice sheet, so that this, together with the deep accumulation of ice in the great ice sheets, must have involved a higher average rate of precipitation during the ice ages. This is why, if you go back and watch my video series 4, try all of them to get a really good education. The sun novas, and that's what causes the evaporation. And you have
The
a
great solar
tremendous amount
flash.
of water up in the upper atmosphere, and it takes 30, 40 or more years to all that moisture wrung out. But it comes back in the form of ice, snow and ice. Okay, so anyway, now meteorologists point out that if precipitation is to be increased, there has to be a greater supply of moisture in the air, naturally. This is chemistry 101. The only possible way of increasing the amount of moisture in the air is to raise the temperature of the air. It would seem, therefore, that to get an ice age, one would have to raise rather than lower the average temperature. Professor Tyndall has remarked that the heat that would be required to evaporate enough water to form a glacier would be sufficient to fuse and transform into glowing molten liquid a stream of cast iron 5 times as heavy as the glacier itself. I had calculated, we know the last time, 12,068 years ago, it was the water went down by at least 450 feet. And I calculated it was over 5 billion calories of heat applied to every square foot of ocean to evaporate 100 to 450 feet. That's a nova, let's face it. Call it what it is. Page 42, it is interesting to list the kinds of hypothetical cases that are suggested to explain the ice age. I'm going to go right into it. Variations in the quality of particular emissions from the radiant heat given off by the sun, like a nova. Now you know why this was the thing that we're going to hide. Interstellar gas or dust, variations in the heat of space. D, variations in the quantity of dust particles in the atmosphere from volcanic eruptions or other causes, or variations in and production of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now you know they went to this excuse to try to explain as the weather was going to get warmer. They already had figured it out that maybe this is the way to go and keep everybody away from this word, the sun. Now we get into what Einstein thought, and Hapgood admitting it. Page 185, 5, the state of matter below the crust. The theory presented in this book depends upon the relationship between three factors. The quality of the momentum transmitted to the crust by the ice cap, the tensile strength of the crust, and also the weakness, the degree of weakness of the lower strata below the crust. And it said, permit the displacement of the crust was only doubtful assumption of the theory. And that's what he thought. In other words, they knew they had nothing. That really wasn't an explanation. The letters from Einstein, I'll say, Hapgood mentions Einstein a little less than 50 times in the body of his book. Practically makes him a second author. But you're going to find out that's really a deception to sell his book. Letter from Albert Einstein and George Sarton, November 24, 1952. In other words, he started the work in 52. And once he had a working theory, he sent him a treatment, an idea. I think that this deduction might be capable of variation at least approximately.
That's correct.
This centrifugal
Paranormal.
momentum should in any case be smaller than the produced by the mass of the deposited ice. Well, we know that, and he even admitted in the book that it wasn't. The mass around the equator, the 24 miles of bulge, is greater by thousands of factors above any ice that's there. So he knew the thing was wrong. Einstein's letter to Hapgood, May 8, 1953. Hapgood just sent him a treatment of the theory. He hadn't even gotten done with the geological stuff, and it was already, he had not gotten the answer from the from other scientists that it can't be weather-wise and stuff like that. Notes of conference with Einstein in January 1955. Mr. Campbell and I had the privilege of a conference with Einstein at which a number of important questions related to the theory were discussed. No place in the book does he really say, when he's quoting Einstein, said that Einstein is accepting this thing. Now, the introduction was the letter that Einstein wrote in 1952, the end of 1952, when he just presented the theory. I realized that only after I read the thing carefully, I realized he's using the introduction as if Einstein is accepting it. But as the thing went along, Einstein dies April 18, 1955, at 76 years old. That's only 2.5 or 3 months after they had this meeting. Now, the other point is this. Do you think Einstein would have gone through the letters in the conference on any schlub who wrote them? But if they wrote to them on the letterhead of the Central Intelligence Agency, I think Einstein would probably pay attention to it, and I think that's really what they did. Unfortunately, we'll never know, because I don't know if Einstein's relatives still have the letter. But anyway, that's the story. Daiho Foundation is a 501c3. We are actually a real science foundation, a 501c3. The other ones are not. They use Patreon and others. Patreon's I think a foundation. You donate to them, and they take a cut of the money and they give it to whoever they want. They can do whatever they want with it. Anyway, we appreciate contributions. If it helps me do this research, and pay for the websites to be up and doing this stuff. And my other notice is expedition. I'm thinking of another expedition to the Sinai. So if you're interested, it's going to be a lot of hard work and maybe dangerous. And maybe cost as much as $10,000 because of permits and supplies for maybe 2 weeks. So, and I'll accept, you have to be a US citizen or British or Israeli or German. And that's about it. Again, the book, chapter 8, has the whole thing explained. The earlier chapter has the earlier iterations of the theory of multidimensional reality. And I hope you learned something.
We're going to keep going, so
and,
pay attention. A lot to go
The next
over.
video is going to be on Chen Thomas and really what he was doing. Of the thing. Variations in the quantity of particle emissions and of the radiant heat given off by the sun. Here's the key part. They try to stay away from that nasty word, the sun. Number D was interesting, variation in the quantity of dust particles in the atmosphere from volcanic eruptions, or variations in proportion of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Now you know why they chose this to give an alternate explanation, because they knew as you get closer to the reversal, the sun's output is going to increase and it's going to get warmer, which means more hurricanes, more typhoons.
Sorry, hold on. We got to find the right one, man. I'm trying to find Senate Bill 4488, where he goes over that pretty good. So hang tight. Give me a second. Yeah, right here. Invited. Shit. Dang it. See, that was 3 months, or... DARPA's deal with. Let's see. Darn it. I should save these things so it makes it easier. I didn't know I was going to have to do this. I didn't know I was going to have to show it to everybody else. So I didn't think about saving it in a reasonable way so I could find it again, find this information. But the Senate Bill 4488 is important. I think we're just going to look it up. Let's just look it up, man. So I got to get out of here, right? Up here. Shoot. Let's just look it up, man. Oop, shit. Bumped the camera. Sorry. Hang on. Probably not right at all. Damn it, I can't spell for crap. Oh, wait a minute, hold on. Oh, Bill. What is this? Senate Bill. Senate Bill. There we go. See this? This is actual. Oh my. Here we go. We're just going to go through it, man. I'm just going to go through it with you because this is so important. Senate Bill 4488, Global Catastrophic Risk, Catastrophic Risk Management Act of 2022. All right, so Senator Portman, he's from Ohio. Hey, let's just listen to it. It's going to sound stupid, but oh well. Here we go. We're just going to listen to it.
There is one summary for S. 4488. Bill summaries are authored by CRS. Shown here, introduced in Senate 06232022. Global Catastrophic Risk Management Act of 2022. This bill directs the President to establish an interagency committee on global catastrophic risk. Global catastrophic risk is defined as the risk of events or incidents consequential enough to significantly harm, set back, or destroy human civilization at the global scale. The President must, 1. Conduct and submit to Congress a detailed assessment of global catastrophic and existential risk. And 2. Produce a report on the adequacy of continuity of operations and continuity of government plans based on the assessed risk. The President shall develop and submit a strategy to provide for the basic needs of the civilian population that is impacted by catastrophic incidents in the United States, coordinate response efforts with state and local governments, the private sector, and nonprofit organizations, promote personal and local readiness and non-reliance on government relief during periods of heightened tension or after catastrophic incidents, and develop international partnerships with allied nations for the provision of relief services and goods. The President must issue a plan to implement and operationalize the strategy. The Department of Homeland Security shall lead a national exercise to test and enhance the operationalization of the implementation plan. The President must provide recommendations to Congress for 1. Actions that should be taken to prepare the United States to implement the strategy, increase readiness, and address preparedness gaps. And 2. Additional authorities that should be considered to more effectively implement the strategy.
All right, we got to go over a better part of that. Let's see. Legislation. Congressional record. All actions. I think this is it.
Report text available as TXT, PDF 238 kilobytes. PDF provides a complete and accurate display of this text. Formatting necessary for an accurate reading of this legislative text, for example italics, strike-throughs, or bolded brackets indicating which text is to be added or omitted may be missing from the TXT display. For a complete and accurate display, see the PDF. Calendar No. 638 117th Congress, Report Senate 2D Session 117-2 _ Global Catastrophic Risk Management ACT of 2022. REPORT. Of the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. United States Senate. To accompany. S. 4488. To establish an interagency committee on global catastrophic risk and for other purposes. Graphic S. Not available in TIFF format. December 13, 2022. Order to be printed. U.S. Government Publishing Office. 39-010 Washington, 2023. Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Gary C. Peters, Michigan, Chairman Thomas R. Carper, Delaware Rob Portman, Ohio Maggie Hassan, New Hampshire Ron Johnson, Wisconsin Kai Sten Cinema, Arizona Rand Paul, Kentucky Jackie Rosen, Nevada James Langford, Oklahoma Alex Padilla, California Mitt Romney, Utah John Ossoff, Georgia Rick Scott, Florida Josh Hawley, Missouri David M. Weinberg, Staff Director Zachary I. Schramm, Chief Counsel Christopher J. Mulkins, Director of Homeland Security David Jazayeri, Senior Professional Staff Member Pamela Thiessen, Minority Staff Director Sim J. Mulapulos, Minority Deputy Staff Director Clyde Hicks Jr., Minority Director of Homeland Security Laura W. Kilbride, Chief Clerk. Calendar No. 638 117th Congress, Report Senate 2D Session 117-254. Global Catastrophic Risk Management ACT of 2022. December 13, 2022. Order to be printed. Mr. Peters, from the Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, submitted the following REPORT to accompany S. 4488, including cost estimate of the Congressional Budget Office. The Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, to which was referred the bill S. 4488, to establish an interagency committee on global catastrophic risk and for other purposes, having considered the same, reports favorably thereon with an amendment in the nature of a substitute, and recommends that the bill, as amended, do pass. Contents. Page I. Purpose and summary 1II. Background and need for the legislation 2II. Legislative history 2IV. Section by section analysis of the bill, as reported 3V. Evaluation of regulatory impact 5Vi. Congressional Budget Office cost estimate 5Vi. Changes in existing law made by the bill, as reported I. Purpose and summary S. 4488. The Global Catastrophic Risk Management Act of 2022 would establish an interagency committee on global catastrophic risk to determine the full range of potential risks that have the potential to significantly harm, set back, or destroy human civilization at the global scale. The
Destroy human civilization at the global scale.
Proposals for how to better identify and assess such risks. Following its assessment, the committee would report on the adequacy of continuity of operations, COOP, and continuity of government, COG, plans for each identified risk. The bill also requires the committee to develop a catastrophic incident response strategy and implementation plan to provide for basic needs of the United States population, coordinate response efforts with state and local governments, the private sector, and nonprofit relief organizations, promote personal and local readiness and non-reliance on government relief during periods of heightened tension or after catastrophic incidents, and develop international partnerships with allied nations for the provision of relief services and goods. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, is then required to lead a national exercise to test and operationalize the implementation plan. The bill also requires the committee to issue recommendations to Congress that the United States could take to better prepare for and respond to catastrophic risks. The second, background and need for the legislation. Global catastrophic threats can produce consequences severe enough to result in significant harm or destruction of human civilization at the global scale or lead to human extinction. Catastrophic events are difficult to foresee, and while unlikely to occur, it is important to ensure that the U.S. government is better prepared for high-consequence events that could cause significant harm. According to the Global Challenges Foundation, some current risks include weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, catastrophic climate change, and ecological collapse / natural catastrophes include pandemics, asteroid impacts, and supervolcanic eruptions that require coordinated global response. One potential emerging risk is through technological advances, such as artificial intelligence, AI, being abused in a way that pose catastrophic risk / the National Intelligence Council, in their 2021 Global Trends Report, provided that technological advances both mitigate and generate existential risk on a global scale / the Council believes that low probability, high impact events may be difficult and expensive
Yes, sir.
to prepare for, but
Turn on my own
developing
path, we're in big
strategies
trouble.
for mitigation of such events can provide some resilience / Global Challenges Foundation. Global Catastrophic Risks 2021, Navigating the Complex Intersections, 2021, https://globalchallenges.org/wp-content/upload/2021/09/global-catastrophic-risks 2021 final /2 / National Intelligence Council Global Trends 2040, a more contested world, March
2040.
2021 /4 / This legislation is intended to mitigate against such potential risks by establishing an interagency committee on global catastrophic risk to determine the full range of potential risks and prepare for the response to a catastrophe. The third, legislative history. S. 4488 was introduced by Senators Portman, R.O., and Peters, D.Me, on June 23, 2022, and referred to the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. Senators Cornyn, RTX, and Hassan, DNH, joined as co-sponsors of the bill on August 6, 2022. The committee considered the legislation at a business meeting on August 3, 2022. During the meeting, Senators Portman and Padilla offered a substitute amendment, as modified, that incorporated agency technical drafting assistance, clarified, defined terms, added additional members to the interagency committee, made changes to the reporting and exercise requirements, and added a rule of construction. The committee adopted the Portman-Padilla substitute amendment as modified and reported the bill favorably by voice vote. As amended, the senators present were Peters, Hassan, Sinema, Rosen, Padilla, Asaf, Langford, Romney, Scott, and Hawley. If section-by-section analysis of the bill as reported. Section 1. Short title. This section designates the name of the bill as the Global Catastrophic Risk Management Act of 2022. Section 2. Definitions. This section defines the terms basic need, catastrophic incident, committee, critical, infrastructure, existential risk, global catastrophic risk, global catastrophic and existential threats, national exercise program, and tribal government. Section 3. Interagency Committee on Global Catastrophic Risk. Subsection A provides that within 90 days after enactment of this bill, the President is required to establish an Interagency Committee on Global Catastrophic Risk. Subsection B lists the members of the committee as follows
Oh,
the
what happened?
Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs, the Director of the Office of Science and Technology
Ah,
Policy,
crap.
the Director of National Intelligence and the Director of the National Intelligence Council, the Secretary of DHS and the Administrator of the FEMA, the Secretary of State and the Undersecretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, the Attorney General and the Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Secretary of Energy, the Undersecretary
Reality,
of Energy
buddy.
for Nuclear Security and the Director of Science, the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response, and the Assistant Secretary of Global Affairs, the Secretary of Commerce, the Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere, and the Undersecretary of Commerce for Standards and Technology, the Secretary of the Interior and the Director of the United States Geological Survey, the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency and the Assistant Administrator for Water, the Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, the Director of the National Science Foundation, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Chair of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, the Secretary of Defense, the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, and the Chief of Engineers and Commanding General of the Army Corps of Engineers, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Administrator of the United States Agency for International Development, and other stakeholders the President determines appropriate. Subsection C requires the committee to be co-chaired by a senior representative of the President and the Deputy Administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency for Resilience. Section 4. Report required. Subsection A provides that within 1 year of final enactment of this bill, and every 10 years after, the President, with support from the established committee, is required to submit a detailed report to Congress assessing global catastrophic and existential risk. Subsection B details the matters that must be covered in the report required by subsection A. Subsection C provides that in the creation of the report required under subsection A, the President and the committee must regularly consult with subject matter experts, including those from non-governmental, academic, and private sector institutions. Subsection D states that the report required under subsection A must be submitted to Congress in unclassified form, but there may also include a classified version. Section 5. Report on continuity of operations and continuity of government planning. Subsection A requires the President, with support from the committee, to submit a secondary report within 180 days of the report required under Section 4 that reports on the adequacy of continuity of operations and continuity of government plans based on the assessed global catastrophic and existential risk. Subsection B details the matters that must be covered in the report required by subsection A. Subsection C states that the report required under subsection A must be submitted to Congress in unclassified form, but there may also include a classified version. Section 6. Enhanced Catastrophic Incident Annex. Subsection A provides that the President, with support from the committee, is required to supplement each federal interagency operational plan to include an annex containing a strategy to ensure the health, safety, and general welfare of the civilian population affected by catastrophic incidents. Subsection B details the information each annex required under subsection A must provide. Subsection C provides the assumptions that the President and committee should account for when designing the strategy required under subsection A, such as multiple levels of critical infrastructure failure. Subsection D states that existing contingency plans may be incorporated in the strategy required under subsection A if they are amended to be in accordance with the requirements of this section. Subsection E provides that the strategy developed under subsection A must be made available to the public but may, include a classified annex available to the appropriate congressional committees and government entities. Section 7. Validation of the strategy through an exercise. This section requires that within 1 year after the addition of the annex required under Section 6, DHS is required to lead an exercise to test and enhance the operationalization of the strategy. Section 8. Recommendations. Subsection A requires the President to provide recommendation to Congress on actions that should be taken to prepare the United States to implement the strategy, and additional authorities that should be considered for federal agencies and the President to implement the strategy more effectively. Subsection B provides that the President may include the recommendations required under subsection A in a report submitted under Section 9. Section 9. Reporting requirements. This section provides that within 1 year of the DHS exercise required under Section 7, the President is required to submit a report to Congress that includes a description of the efforts to develop and update the strategy required under Section 6. Section 10. Rule of construction. This section states that nothing in this act can be construed to supersede the Civilian Emergency Management authority of the FEMA Administrator versus evaluation of regulatory impact. Pursuant to the requirements of paragraph 11B of Rule XXVI of the Standing Rules of the Senate, the committee has considered the regulatory impact of this bill and determined that the bill will have no regulatory impact within the meaning of the rules. The committee agrees with the Congressional Budget Office's statement that the bill contains no intergovernmental or private sector mandates as defined in the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act, UNRRA, and would impose no costs on state, local, or tribal governments. By Congressional Budget Office Cost Estimate, U.S. Congress, Congressional Budget Office, Washington, D.C., November 9, 2022. Hunt. Gary C. Peters, Chairman, Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, U.S. Senate, Washington, D.C. Dear Mr. Chairman, the Congressional Budget Office has prepared the enclosed table summarizing estimated budgetary effects and mandates information for some of the legislation that has been ordered reported by the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs during the 117th Congress. If you wish further details, we will be pleased to provide them. The CBO staff contact for each estimate is listed on the enclosed table. Sincerely, Philip L. Swagel, Director. Enclosure, Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. The Congressional Budget Act of 1974 requires the Congressional Budget Office, to the extent practicable, to prepare estimates of the budgetary effects of legislation ordered reported by congressional authorizing committees. In order to provide the Congress with as much information as possible, the attached table summarizes information about the estimated direct spending and revenue effects of some of the legislation that has been ordered reported by the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs during the 117th Congress. The legislation listed in this table generally would have small effects, if any, on direct spending or revenues, CBO estimates. Where possible, the table also provides information about the legislation's estimated effects on spending subject to appropriation and on intergovernmental and private sector mandates as defined in the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act. Estimated budgetary effects and mandates information increases direct spending subject pay as you on budget bill title status last budget spending revenues to go deficits mandates contact number action function 2023 to 2032 2023 to 2032 appropriation procedures beginning 2023 to 2027 apply. In 2033 S 4488 Global ordered March 22nd 08800 between not estimated yes no Matthew catastrophic reported 0 and Pickford risk $500,000 Management Act of 2022 S 4,488 would establish an interagency committee to assess the risk of global catastrophes that could harm or destroy human civilization. The bill would require the president to develop a strategy based on the committee's recommendations to respond to such risks, and require the Department of Homeland Security
Thank
to
you.
lead an
Salutes to you
exercise
too,
to
man.
test the strategy.
Pay attention.
CBO estimates that enacting S. 4,488 would have no effect on direct spending, and an insignificant effect on revenues over the 2023-2032 period. CBO has not estimated the discretionary costs of implementing the bill. The bill contains no intergovernmental or private sector mandates as defined in the Unfunded Mandates Reform Act. 7. Changes in existing law made by the bill, as reported. This legislation would make no change in existing law within the meaning of clauses A and B of subparagraph 12 of Rule XXVI of the Standing Rules of the Senate, because this legislation would not repeal or amend any provision of current law. All.
Well, I hope you all got something out of my research and stuff that I do. But this is what Michael was trying to tell us, man. This is the great solar flash right here, man. This is it. So, with all that, it's a long video, I know, but pay attention because it's important, man. Like I said, Professor Vogt there, I'm going to call him at 10. He asked me to call him at 10 tonight. And I'm going to ask him for his help to get this dude's channel back up on there. See what his ideas are or whatever. All right. Have a great day. Love yous.